Yeah. Wake up with coffee and sports. Sunrise glow, listen coast to coast. A flow like you know.
Offensively, who made them? Oh, Patrick Mahomes.
Sideline to sideline with plays to show. This network's got the spark.
When you put up 300 yards rushing against someone, that you got your butt whooped.
I feel like I would have liked to see Oregon Ohio State in the semis, not the quarters. So I think some reseeding is probably where I would change. But
they're out of their mind. They're going to do this 3 quarterbacks in a row.
Here's the crazy.
I just can't take it.
First deep flying high, fast cheering loud, and one podcast moving through the crowd. Needy boys brawling, no holds barred loud. This wire life never in doubt. Tune into the vibe.
That's my bold prediction for the show. Devin Booker, in the next 3 years, he will be a Houston Rocket.
Because I still think Seth is still at the top of his game. I do. I think he's right there. Who knows? Maybe. Not this year, but one time soon. Why wouldn't we potentially see Seth and Roman? You know what I mean?
Tune in the vibe. Party Rex, court centers. Got me on the mic, now let's spill the tea. Talking courtside dreams from history. Legends on the blacktop now and then. From Wilt to Steph, we hit it again. Better chimes in, let's go deep. Young bloods rising, can't skip a beat. Puppy prospects with fire in their eyes. Draft night suckers and hoop dream high. Wire to wire, bring the heat. Podcast magic can't be beat. Do better, we're roll better. We're hoop heads, trendsetters.
Hey, what's poppin', y'all? It is your boy, Guard E3. And first off, I appreciate that, Gene. Thank you. Thank you very much. And welcome to the And One Podcast. And of course, joining me just like every week, he is the greatest co-host of all time. He is Mo Betta. How you doing, Mo?
I'm doing great. It's Thursday night, so you know we're talking hoops. Thanks for everybody tuning in. Let's get into it.
Oh, absolutely. You know how we start this out, Mo? We got to start out with an underrated player or team. So, why don't you get us started, Mo? Who is your underrated player of the week?
Well, since we're at the height of heights and we're at the Final Four, I want to, and we're hearing a lot of talks about what would happen should Cooper Flagg lead Duke to the national championship, and he's the player of the tournament along with player of the year. Where would he rank amongst Duke's greats? Well, I want to talk about a Duke great that no one does talk about when they say greatest Duke player. The quarterback, the point guard of those two-time NCAA champions, Bobby Hurley. Bobby Hurley was a terrific facilitator. He was the engine that stirred that. He was also a terrific on-ball perimeter defender, tenacious competitor, great teammate. And he's been a great ambassador for basketball throughout. He didn't have a great, impactful career in the NBA. Was cut short by injury, but he's gone on to be a very good coach in the MAC league. He's won the MAC championship, multiple MAC division championships. So when you think of the Hurley, starting off with Bob Sr., then you've got Bobby, and then now you've got his brother, a national championship. The Hurleys have made their own name throughout basketball, but I think Bobby Hurley gets lost in time. When we talk about all-time Duke Blue Devils, Bobby Hurley is one of the great ones.
I think that's a fantastic pull. It's one I definitely wasn't thinking of. So that was a great one. I love the direction you went there, Mo. Not gonna lie, that was good. That was really good. Say my underrated player this week. I wanted to respect a guy who's in the league forever. He's a very solid player, almost nothing more, nothing less. Talking about the ultimate role player. Give me Trevor Ariza.
Oh wow!
I thought that man was a little underrated for what he did. This man, he went everywhere he went. Team success followed, and every single team seemed to want him. If you were a contender, you wanted Trevor Ariza. because he was actually very good at what he did. So I think when we talk about, really good, 3-and-D role players, I think that's a guy that should get a little more love. So, you know what? I'm going to give flowers to Trevor Ariza for the long and great career that he had.
That's a great pick. I remember Trevor Ariza initially when he was with the Knicks. What stood out to me initially was that he was very athletic, very quick, and was a good defender. I think once he got away from the Knicks and he was put on contenders, you could say every contender he got put on, they realized that he was a piece that can make them an actual title contender, being that 3-and-D guy on the perimeter. He's got a big spot with me because obviously as a Laker fan, he helped the Lakers win that title versus the Magic, which was the beginning of Kobe's own two-peat. Trevor Ariza was a terrific perimeter defender, made big shots all throughout the postseason in that run, including in those finals. And he was instrumental in their ability to shut down Dwight Howard by doubling down and crowding him. So, yeah, I love that. That's a great pick. We don't talk a lot about guys that are household names, but shout out to guys like Trevor Ariza who have great long careers and they impact winning.
So guys like Trevor Ariza are a big reason why, the household names are household names.
Agreed.
Like, you don't win titles without guys like Ariza. So, and we got a lot to get into tonight, Mo, too. We had some fun conversations on ESPN today, that we're going to get into. But, before I get into that, you mentioned the NCAA tournament. And, I thought we'd get right into, one of my favorite things to do every week, puppy prospects. I love shouting out the young talent that we get to watch, and I can't wait to see them at the next level. And I think it is great. And I think this guy right here, Kasparis Jakunis, sorry if I mispronounce his name a little bit. It's a little challenging. I like his game. If anybody hasn't seen him play, point guard out of Illinois, my player comp for him, he strikes me as almost like a bigger Goran Dragic.
Oh, wow.
He's big. He's not athletic, but he makes up for that around the rim. His shooting can kind of come and go, but he's also makes up for it by, being a good playmaker. He does have a little bit of a turnover issue. And while he is a very fundamentally solid defender, size and strength can overwhelm him. But with his size and length, I think that, he can I'll pull that down so you can see the little. I think he could guard 1 through 3 at the next level. And I think one of his biggest flaws at the next level is one of my pros can actually be his cons at times. He has a really nice step back. He's shown the ability to hit difficult shots, but that's something he can over rely on at sometimes. So you'll see him taking a lot of like step backs, 20 seconds on the clock, that kind of make you scratch your head. But this is a guy that if you get him, he has a really high upside, and I think that this is a piece that could contribute to a winning team, in the future.
So is he a pure point guard, or do you view him more as a combo guard?
Right, closer to a combo guard.
So depending on the team that drafts him, he could spend some time at the 2, right? Correct?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. See, I made say for position, I just put guard because he can flip between the 1 and the 2. So I think he can do both. Now, he's got to be a little more comfortable playing off the ball. The funny part is, I think that 3-point percentage will go up. I'm not too worried about that. But yeah, it's just you just got to get him comfortable playing off the ball, and I think that's very possible with him. I like his game, and I think he can go anywhere from the 5th pick in the draft to the 5th. I think he's a lottery pick for sure.
I mean, well, if your player comp is accurate, I think he's going to be a hell of a player because I remember when Dragon was on Phoenix before they really even knew what they had. And the first time Dragon really stood out, it was in a postseason series versus the Spurs where he ate Tony Parker alive for that series. If he can attack the basket off the dribble like Dragon, he's going to be scary.
Yeah, and like I said, he's got that like Dragic, like not explosive, but just very crafty around the rim. And I like his finishing package around the rim, and he's got a really nice floater, so he makes up for that lack of explosiveness in a couple different ways. So I'm looking forward to seeing where he goes in the draft. I think the Nets, Jazz, and 76ers would be fun teams for him. Be a great backcourt with Maxey. So yeah, I'd say that's my puppy prospect for this week for the men's side.
I like it. So look, ultimately, we don't know where the Sixers are going to be drafting, but let's say they don't get one of the top 3 picks. If they're able to draft this kid, he would be a great fit, like you said, with Tyrese Maxey.
No, absolutely. I completely agree. And, for the women's side, we got the news that Olivia Miles, she's going to be going back to school for her last year of eligibility. So, one, I think that she was the consensus. I think she would have went number 2 for sure, only behind Paige. But let me show you who I think really benefits from that. Cheyenne Sellers out of Maryland, I think really benefits from this. I think the biggest beneficiary will be Sonia Cintron. I think she's going to move up a couple places for a guard needy team. But I think Cheyenne, I think that she's also going to move up a little bit on some people's draft boards. That's one less quality guard to be had that puts her in a little bit of higher demand. I think she's a very creative offensive player. She's a creative passer. She's good at drawing fouls. So, and then on offense, my biggest flaw kind of with Cheyenne is she's an elite three-point shooter, but she hesitates at times. She will be a little hesitant to pull the trigger on some of these shots where she should just kind of let them rip. Say, sure, her size is good, but she's inconsistent. She'll lose defenders off the ball. But, she's inconsistent defensively, but she has size to be really versatile. And she kind of turns the ball over a lot. So that's something she's got to clean up at the next level. But at the same time, she has a great float game as well. She can attack and score all 3 levels. And that 6'2" size is going to be very versatile in a lot of defensive schemes. So I think that, once again, this is a pick that I could see her going all the way up in the top 6, or it'll be interesting. I think she's a guaranteed first rounder is what I'm trying to say.
And I see the teams that you have that she's a good fit for: the Wings, Mystics, in the Sky. Look, I think the Sky could definitely use some more backcourt help. So to go along with what they drafted last year, they definitely need more help on the perimeter. So I like that idea that she could end up on the Sky.
Oh, absolutely. So those are my puppy prospects for this week. Like I said, I always enjoy talking about, different prospects. But, from prospects, Mo, to, well, not so much a prospect, I guess. Of course, we saw it. Marcus Morris was talking on ESPN. And he was talking about how Mr. Nikola Jokic is not a top 20 player of all time. Now, to be clear, asking any Morris twin to speak objectively on Jokic, that's really not a great sign. That's that's the worst views. Obviously, they still have beef, but I'm curious what you think of the take, Mo. Is Jokic a top 20 player, do you think?
So here's the thing. You and I already have our top 10. And maybe if we include the older iconic players, then it would push a couple of our guys. Instead of 10, they'd be 11 and 12, I guess. And so then I started thinking, who are the players from 11 through 20? Because we don't often talk about those. Some people would have Akeem Olajuwon right outside the top 10. I wouldn't, but some people would. Hell, some people would have Shaq outside the top 10. I'm wondering, is Jokic a top 20 all-time player? So I look at it from 2 ways. If if you look at his numbers, I'm just talking about his numbers and what he's done to this point in his career. His numbers, his individual accolades, along with the fact that he's won a championship, he's won a finals MVP, and he's won, I believe he's a 3-time MVP already. His accolades and his numbers say yes. If I could simplify it, I'm just saying I'm looking at it from that point of view. Now, if you want to get into a more nuanced argument, which I think it seemed like that's where the argument or the debate went, if you want to call it a debate, Kendrick Perkins went with the numbers. He said, look at his numbers. He's already better than Patrick Ewing and David Robinson and Yao Ming, and I forget who else he threw in there. And I thought about it. Is he better than those three? I think you can – I get where the argument's going to be, that they're all – well, I don't know about they all, but Robinson and Ewing are clearly much better defenders. It's night and day. But he's so much better offensively, his impact would still be just as profound, right? In a way, you could argue his offense is his defense. That's how dominant he is offensively. And I've also heard people make the case, well, if Ewing came up in today's era, would he not be shooting threes? I get it. And that's a fair point. But I'm looking at the debate this way. I'm just talking about with the skill sets that we know them to have. So the skill sets that Patrick Ewing had, Robinson had, Alonzo Mourning had, Yao had. Yes, Joker. Perkins put out 1 point that I think is undisputable. Joker is the most skilled offensive player as a big man we've ever seen. I agree with that. I agree with that 100%. I agree with that 100%. And he's already accumulated accolades that a lot of guys have never accumulated. So do I think he should be the funny thing is you and I never talk about our top 20. We've kind of obsessed about our top 10. I guess at some point N1 should do the second half and do their top 20. And then we could have that conversation. So maybe we should give you guys like a tease and go, we'll do the top 20. And then you'll find out, because I'm not so sure that he's not already. And I know some people will disagree with me, and you talk about the greats. They're still great. They're all still great. I'm simply talking about his career is not complete. He's got a resume, Brett, that if he stopped playing today, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. Am I wrong?
No, you're definitely not wrong.
Right. So he's that right now. And he's not a finished product. How do I know that Joker's not going to because I do know this. He will add more All-Star appearances. He will add more All-NBA selections. The only question is he gonna get 2 or 3 more MVPs? I do believe at some point in Nikola Jokic's career, I don't know when, that he will win at least a second title. So if you think about a guy who's a 2-time champion, and he's going to be a 15-time All-NBA, 15-time, 16-time All-Star, and all those kind of things, how is he not top 20? That would be my response. Like, I haven't given it a lot of thought, but I'm trying to think just in the immediate sense who that would be from 11 to 20 would be better than him.
I think the answer is easy, right? And actually, what we could do real quick, Mo? We could play a game of Nikola Jokic but using our friend Nate's list, because Nate has Nate actually has a list of a top 400 players, but
yeah, I know he does. But so what we're looking for players 11 to 20.
I got you. So I can tell you right now, he's already top 20 in my book, especially with some of these names. Nikola Jokic or Moses Malone?
Moses Malone, that's easy. No, I'm kidding. Moses Malone was phenomenal, relentless competitor. But I would take Joker.
All right. He has some. This is next. He has some. Players from back in the day, the pre-merger with Mike and West and Robinson. But the next player post-merger, Nikola Jokic or Kevin Durant?
I would argue, and I could be wrong, that that's going to be the toughest player to compare him to in terms of their value. It's difficult. It's difficult. I'll put it this way. I value NBA Finals MVPs more than I value regular season MVPs. But I'm looking at what Joker's doing, not just from a statistical standpoint. And I want to remind everybody, Durant's basically, I think his legacy is his legacy. Would you agree? Like barring him going to a really stacked squad wherever he should go, he's probably not going to win another title. That's just my guess.
Yeah, that's fair.
So and it's a great legacy, by the way. This is in no way me denigrating Kevin Durant. I'm a huge fan. I would say, knowing that, let's just say I'm right, I would take Joker. I would take Joker.
Well, actually, Nate would agree with you because his number 15 is Nikola Jokic. 16 is Durant.
Nate is a wise man. Wise man.
The spots in 11 to 14 that he has ahead of Jokic are 14, Hakeem Olajuwon.
I would have Hakeem ahead of Joker for now.
Say 13, Dr. J. I think Nate also took in like ABA with this one too.
I was getting ready to ask you. So if you do like baseball has done now with stats, and I think the NBA should do that, then Doc's career right now today he would still be ahead of Joker. So I'm good with that. I'm fine with that.
At 12, he has Wilt.
I can't look. Wilt is Wilt. He's gonna be in the top 15. I'm fine with that for now.
And 11, Steph Curry.
Steph changed the game of basketball. I'm absolutely fine with that. And the funny thing is, I believe in our own rankings, we have Steph inside the top 10. Correct?
Oh yeah,
right.
So yeah, no, I think once again, I think with Marcus Morris, asking him to be objective with Jokic would be like asking Karl Marx to be objective before talking about democracy. Like that just doesn't work. So
Karl Marx.
It's like I think he's top 20 pretty. I'd say honestly, I'm confident enough to say top 20 pretty easily at this point.
Yeah, and I don't want to say that in a disrespectful way. I'm just going to say that I had no idea where Nate ranked him or where he ranked Durant. So I do think that's where he should be ranked. And I say for right now, because I want to remind everybody that's joining us, Joker is far from a finished product. He's not done adding to his legacy. So I do think he's going to continue to climb.
Steph top 10 all day. Fair enough. Yeah, we'll have to do our 11 through 20. I'll have to go dig up our 1 through 10. I know we have it.
We have him top 10.
We do. So he had some other interesting takes. For most feared player in the NBA, he said, I'm taking Kawhi Leonard over Steph Curry.
I don't understand that line of thinking at all. I don't understand that.
I think I do. It's called that's his friend and former teammate. And Curry just smoked him.
I
think that's just the bias in him talking, honestly. I don't think it's more than that.
Right, because I think if we were going to give an honest list, like say the top 5 players, the most feared players going into this postseason, I don't think Kawhi would be in the top 5. That's not a knock against him. It's just about we have to judge you on what you've done in recent seasons, not what you did 5 or 6 seasons ago. And right now, today, as a fan, I'm just happy Kawhi Leonard is still upright and playing and functioning and being a good player. I'm good with that, but I don't think he's the most feared guy in the postseason. I don't think he's one of the 5 most feared guys in the postseason. I would argue that even though I'm not the biggest James Harden fan, I think Harden is more feared than Kawhi is right now today.
Say Kawhi's been picked. Honestly, like I said, with Kawhi, I'm just happy, and I'm not buying any Kawhi stock until I see him healthy in the postseason. Like,
and stay healthy.
yeah, that's kind of my thing with Kawhi. I want to be excited again for Kawhi Leonard, but I'm just pumping the brakes on, Kawhi, and I'm just like, I just got to see you happy and healthy first for like a series before I can start, believing in you again.
Yeah, I'm there. Look, I don't have a problem with the take that Steph is feared. I don't think he's the most feared player. Because let's agree on this. At his peak, at the very best version of Steph's peak, and he was tremendous, I would not describe Steph Curry as unguardable. He's tremendous, but he's not he's guardable. He's not unguardable. So I think he's feared. He can be feared, but if I'm going to fear somebody, I'm going to fear somebody that you fear night in and night out. I don't think people fear Steph like that. I would fear a rejuvenated LeBron because he's got Luka flanking him. I'd fear Luka. I would fear Luka more than I would fear Steph. I would fear Anthony Edwards. I would fear Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I would fear Joker. Like if I was going to go top, I know Joker doesn't make the most interesting highlights or whatever, but if I'm saying the most feared player, that the guy that goes, what are we going to do with this guy night in and night out? It's not Steph. I think it's Joker.
I think offensively, that's just I think that's an easy one. Who's the most feared offensive player right now? Yeah, it's neither. It's just the answer is Jokic, and
yeah,
I don't even think there's really a debate right now. Like you can debate it, but all roads are just going to point back to Nikola Jokic as the most feared offensive player.
Yeah, and look, now he's the most complete offensive player. If you were going to nuance it and go, who's the most feared player, say, in the Eastern Conference who's capable of averaging 40 points for a series? I think that would be Donovan Mitchell.
Say Donovan Mitchell's a good answer to that one, obviously. Also, of course, Giannis has still been going ballistic with his scoring output. Giannis is always so tough because, like, in your head, you go, well, you can guard him. He's very limited. He can't shoot threes. And then, like, you watch teams try to guard him. It's like, oh, you really can't guard him, huh?
I feel like they should change the word guard him and say you can slow him down, right? Because I think you can slow him down, but if even the teams that have slowed him down, when you look up at the end of the day, so we slowed him down, but he had 28, 12, and 3. But we slowed him down. So I don't think – I haven't seen nobody ever out and out stop Giannis. I've seen him have bad shooting nights himself, but I've never seen somebody go, that guy right there by himself, he can shut Giannis down. I've never seen that.
Yeah, so Giannis had a video game stat line tonight, Mo. We went for 35, 20, and 17 against the 76ers.
That's crazy.
Hey, what's up, Key?
Hey, what's going on, Key? Well, the good news is the Sixers finally got the memo and they're not trying to win games. Good for them. Good for them.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. That's fair enough. And, kind of speaking of the 76ers, Mo, I thought they'd be a fun team to, look at today, right? Kind of, take a peek at who's leaving, who do you think they should keep, and who should they let walk in free agency? Because their season's over, right? Like, Joel Embiid just got ruled out. They're out of the playoffs. Maxey's out for the rest of the year. So, I made this fun little, chart of all of their free agents. Now, obviously, these guys have a player option: Oubre, Drummond, Eric Gordon. But I think there's some really interesting names. I don't want to hear it, Kyle. The honest stopper, Al Horford. Sorry, we're talking some Sixers basketball. You might have picked the wrong episode, Key. No, I'm kidding. But I figured it'd be a little fun. So, obviously, they're not going to have a lot of cap space this summer. They're pretty much going to be, aiming vet minimum guys. But I'm curious, Mo, looking at this list, do you see anybody who hops out at you that you go, yep, they absolutely have to retain under, the club option and free agent side of things?
I think Yabusele's been a really good player for them. I think he's a winning player. He's that kind of 6th or 7th man that he impacts winning. So, and I think that a lot of teams are going to pursue him. I hope the Sixers are able to retain him. Quentin Grimes is going to be a restricted free agent. Clearly, his stock has risen because he's shown you that he's more than a 3-and-D guy. I would pursue trying to keep Quentin Grimes. Lonnie Walker is very unique because ever since he's been in the league, he's always tempted us, Brett, where we thought Lonnie Walker is a beat away from being a consistent 19-point-a-game scorer who could be a solid starter. And then he kind of gets into these little shooting slumps and teams fall out of love with him. So he's become somewhat of a journeyman, even though he's still a very young player. If I had to bet money on it, I would think that the Sixers are going to move. They're going to move away from Lonnie Walker. They're going to move away from the veteran Kyle Lowry. You want to keep Oubre because I think Oubre does give you scoring and a little versatility up front because he can play the 2-3. Andre Drummond is a great backup. If he doesn't ask for a raise of any kind, I think they keep Drummond. Eric Gordon, I think that was the disappointing signing. I thought he was going to be better for them. He looked, to me this season, he looked washed. And maybe it was the culture because everything was kind of like downbeat. But I think they move on from him. I'm with you, Key. Yeah, yes, 100%. You want McCain and Grimes to go with Maxey. I love that. 100. I'm with you on that. If I'm opposing teams, he's a restricted free agent, but I would make Grimes an offer he couldn't refuse and make the Sixers match it.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's going to be the fun part. Obviously, they're very close to that first apron, which will trigger a whole lot of restrictions right now. I agree with that, though. I really would love to see Oubre come back for them. I would love to see if they can bring him back, Quentin Grimes. But I do think that a team's going to challenge the Sixers and even overpay him just to be like, here you go, have fun with this one.
Yeah, I think they challenge him with Grimes, and I think a lot of teams are gonna go after Yabusele because Yabusele is a good basketball player.
Yeah, no, I would love to see him back, but again, I think that somebody else is gonna overpay him, and I think he's gonna be gone too. I think the fun part about the 76ers is, Kyle Lowry was done a couple years ago. Somebody forgot to tell him that. He has one good playoff game, and everybody thinks he's back, and that gets him his big contract. I think the fun part about the 76ers, and I think this is where, this is going to either make or break their year, their projected draft pick. They're projected to be number 5. As long as they stay in the top 6, I think they're happy. But obviously, anything higher up would be great. I can't wait to see where that falls because I think there's some very interesting targets. I think if you want, and I put 3 different kinds of players. We talked about Jakunis earlier, but it could fall that if you need some ISO scoring, because I think Ace Bailey can give that to you. Do you want some better two-way play? Because I think that's VJ Edgecombe all day. And obviously there's also Cooper Flagg and Dylan Harper, who I think, are really the 1 and 2 pick in the draft.
Right.
But obviously that would depend on them getting all the way up to 1 or 2 to be able to snag one of those guys. Possible, but I think that's going to be a lot of fun for the 76ers because, Mo, I think that if their draft goes the right way and they are able to bring back Quentin Grimes and really kind of get younger and more athletic around Tyrese and George and Embiid, because let's be real, it's going to be impossible to move those guys this year.
Right.
I think as long as those two can stay, reasonably healthy, I could see this team competing for a playoff spot again next year. Wouldn't call them title contenders, but I could see them getting into the thick of a playoff race next year.
I agree. I think they would be legitimate playoff contenders, meaning I think it wouldn't shock me if the Sixers were the 5th or 6th seed.
Yeah, and I think that would be great for them, obviously, bouncing back. I think if an offer comes, for, Embiid that they can't refuse, that they should pull the trigger on it. But I think also that his just value is just way too low right now. I wouldn't sell low on him. If you can get him to come back healthy, get him a reasonably healthy year, even waiting a year to trade him, like his value can't get any lower than it is now. So
You know what? I'm not so sure about that. I think his value could get lower if he comes back from a surgery and he gets injured again. Yeah, his value could absolutely get lower. I would argue that if he has the surgery and all the medicals say it went successfully and he's out there running around and ready to go, I would trade him then. Because what I would be selling the opposing team is his potential, the potential of what he could be. I would trade Joel Embiid as soon as he is medically cleared. He'd be on the first train smoking.
yeah, and that's fair. That's fair. I say I could see him getting moved even at the trade deadline. I think that'd be a fun one. I think he could be a possible target because, especially, I think if you get you get someone like it's just a cleanup surgery on their knee. I especially I think Mo, if let's say they do get lucky and they get like Cooper Flagg or Dylan Harper or even Edgecombe, those are guys that are better in a fast-paced system to run the floor. At that point, Joel Embiid just kind of doesn't fit anymore. It's just kind of awkward and redundant because you're not going to want to run a post-centric offense at that point. So I think even if the draft pick goes high, at that point, I think you consider pulling the trigger. I know it's a tough choice, but at that point, I think you move on from Embiid.
To me, it's not a tough choice. I think Daryl Morey is old school to a fault, and he wants to hold on to him. And I'm like, I said this 2-3 years ago. He's the kind of player that's not going to age well. He's not going to age well. And you're not going to win a title with Joel Embiid as your best player. If you're not going to win a title with him, why wouldn't you move him? That's all I'm saying. Like, because as he gets older, he's gonna be even more devalued. I just wouldn't hold on to him. I know there are teams out there who think that they could put people around him and contend with him. Then let them deal with his issues. But I would trade him as soon as possible. I would start building around Tyrese Maxey and the other young pieces that I already have.
See, I agree, but I know it'd be a hard choice for Daryl Morey. So that's kind of who I was referring to, saying it's a hard choice. Because I know for like me, like being completely away and just trying to look at it from the outside, to me, that's like, yeah, absolutely ship him out. But Daryl Morey, he really loves his stars, and I could very easily selling himself on, well, he'll be back and healthy next year, get a healthy Paul George, and we'll run it back. Get Morey out. Now we've got to build the future. Someone will give us a haul for Joel. Yeah, I think the only way that Morey could royally screw up the Sixers offseason actually is he does love the now. The only way I could see that him like royally screwing everything up is if he decides to go for a win now move by moving that number 5 pick if they get it, or even number 6. That to me would be like a fireable worthy offense, but
you're not saying he wouldn't do it though, right? You're not saying he wouldn't do that.
Oh, he would do it. That's the scary part.
Right. I'm with you.
Like, if a star player becomes available, like I could see him absolutely pulling the trigger. Like, I could see if like Morey tends to overvalue superstars, so who says that if someone like, I'm trying to think of the biggest name available this offseason that isn't Kevin Durant. But, yeah, say if a star becomes available, I could see him pulling the trigger. I hope he wouldn't trade a number 5 for Durant, but also, like, Morey, I wouldn't put it past him either.
Well, maybe that would be part of the deal. If you're not going to get Cooper Flagg, and you are picking around 5, maybe you make a deal where you send the number 5 pick along with Paul George's contract, and you get back Kevin Durant in return. Maybe Phoenix would take that. maybe Phoenix would take Paul George, his contract, the number 5 pick for Kevin Durant, and let's say they throw in another asset, and it won't be Bradley Beal. They're not taking Bradley Beal back in return. But maybe they get one of the younger players the Suns have. Like, I'm just saying, Daryl Morey is really big on the now. So you're trading 35-year-old Paul George for 36, going to be 37-year-old Kevin Durant, which even though he's 36, 37, he's clearly better than Paul George is. That they're both on the other side of their prime, but Durant is still at a really high level, and Paul George looks like he's struggling to just get out of the bed right now. So I would make that if you're the Sixers and you're Daryl Morey and you're obsessed with the now, and you think if I can plug in KD with Embiid, with Maxey, with McCain, and some of the returning players, or Grimes or whatever, do I think I could contend in the East? I think he would think that. I would push back on that and go, that move would have made a huge impact if Kevin Durant was 4 years younger. I don't think it would be the same impact with the current version of Kevin Durant.
Maury talking to James Jones, that's a conversation. I'm just imagining, Mo, like, imagine you're Devin Booker and you roll out of bed, like, and see that update, like, yeah, so Paul George for Kevin Durant, and then they try to sell you, like, yeah, so you're playing with a big three of Bradley Beal, Paul George, and yourself. I'd just be like, nah, I'm not going to be here. I'll pull a Magic Johnson. Get me out.
Hey, remember, you said within the next 3 years, Book would be a Rocket. Well, guess what? If they propose those trades, he's going to accelerate that process.
Oh, no, absolutely. It would maybe be the funniest trade of all time, honestly.
I would keep the pick. I know you have to let the younger player develop. I understand all that. But they have to start making moves that impact the present, but more importantly, impact their future. Their future is Tyrese Maxey and whatever young pieces they have around him. It's not Embiid. It's certainly not Paul George. And if the owner was smart, he'd realize it's not Daryl Morey.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's always I think Morey's a good lesson in, don't take you don't always have to make the big move. You don't always have to chase the superstar.
Right.
I feel like Paul George is almost a lesson too, because teams seem to make this mistake. Like if there's a max caliber contract player and the team he's with, who's been watching him for years, isn't willing to give him a max because something's off, probably take the hint. The Clippers weren't willing to give Paul George that max. That probably should have been a sign. And, we saw that happen to, years prior, right? The Suns wouldn't give Amari Stoudemire the max, but the Knicks jumped on it, even though, Stats' knees were ready to kind of retire a couple of years later. So I feel like teams should take almost multiple lessons from that whole ordeal. Like, one, don't always chase a superstar. And two, if the organization isn't willing to give a big contract to a player and they know him that well, maybe take that one more seriously.
Agreed. Agreed 100%. I feel like all the flags were there. The red flags were there with Paul George because the Clippers didn't even make a bid. They literally just said, if you're bidding for Paul George, you're bidding against yourself. We're not even in it. And if I was the Sixers, I would have paused on that and been like, something's not right. And look, like I said, Daryl Morey likes to make the splash move, and he's big on putting Band-Aids over problems. I've never seen Daryl Morey build a team from the ground up. It's kind of not what he does. And I don't think he's going to do that now. I think he's going to swing big again. Either he's going to double down and go, no, once Embiid is healthy, once Paul George is healthy, we've got our big three. We'll put some pieces around it and we'll go from there. Or he will take a swing at KD, and he'll learn the hard way again that you can't keep trading these older stars for another older star, hoping that they're going to pop for you at this stage of their career.
No, absolutely. Speaking of, it's funny because I kind of mentioned the Knicks earlier, and the Knicks can add another person. Can say they have another first ballot Hall of Famer. It was announced to the surprise of most that Carmelo Anthony is a first ballot Hall of Famer. So all I want to say is congratulations, Carmelo. Well deserved.
I agree. Look, people forget that the Basketball Hall of Fame, it's not just about your NBA career or your professional career. It's the totality of your basketball career, meaning what Carmelo Anthony did in college, and all he did was lead Syracuse to a national championship as a freshman. It's what Carmelo Anthony's done in the Olympics. I believe he's a 3 or 4-time gold medalist. And then you look at his NBA career. No, he does not have a title on his resume. But like I told somebody earlier today, the Hall of Fame is full of great players who do not have a title on their resume. I think Melo was very unique. He was a small forward who had the strength and power of a power forward. He could play. He was too big and strong for threes to guard, and he was too quick for fours to try to stay in front of. I thought in Denver, the younger version of Carmelo Anthony was literally unguardable. No one could guard Carmelo Anthony. I thought in New York he was still at a high level, but in New York I thought he relied more on his jump shot than he did putting the ball on the floor. Look, a great natural scorer, a living bucket. I have no problem with him being the first ballot Hall of Famer. I think he's deserving of it.
And I completely agree. I saw some people, they're like, well, how is Carmelo a first ballot Hall of Famer? Like, are you blind? Like, do you not watch that man? Like,
right.
He's one of the greatest pure scorers the game has ever seen. He obviously, what he did in college, the Olympics, and I know he didn't win a ring, but there are some guys who I think fall into a wrong place, wrong time category, and I think Carmelo's one of those guys.
Yeah, I like, you know what? I like that analogy because think about it this way. If Melo later in his career shows a little bit of patience, it would have been Melo, Dwayne Wade, and LeBron in Miami, right? But he chose the exercise of going for the money and getting the trade to New York, which changed everything. If you can go back even further, go back to just draft night. Go back to his draft night. If he's drafted where he's supposed to be drafted, I think his career his career arc is different. He would have been on a veteran team that had already won a championship. He would have been on a veteran team with one of the great coaches in Larry Brown, and I think that would have changed his fortunes. So, yeah, I love the idea, as great as he was, that he's definitely right player, wrong time, multiple times throughout his career.
Yeah, and absolutely, and that's the thing. Like, even looking at just his playing career too, like, okay, he didn't win a title. First, let's start. He was in the West, so obviously he was having wars with Kobe and the Lakers, trying to just get out of the West, and Duncan and the Spurs. So, obviously, then he goes to the Knicks. He goes to the East. What happens as soon as he goes to the East? The big three forms in Miami: LeBron, Wade, and Bosh, who would just have a stranglehold over the East for the next 4 years. And by the time they disbanded, at that point, Carmelo was aging and LeBron was just somehow getting better.
Right.
So it almost felt like he would have won a title in quite a few different eras, I think. And in quite a few different situations, I think Carmelo wins a title. And the discussion around him is completely different. But unfortunately, like you mentioned, forcing the trade and draft night, and then even though I think the Nuggets were a good team, he had to try to get through dynasties in order to get to the promised land, and that's just not in the cards for everybody.
No. And so I don't hold that against him. Like we said, he's deserving of being a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's in the building. If you were going to say what floor is he on, I would say I guess he's on the third or fourth floor. Because in my mind, when I think of the Hall of Fame, there's a penthouse, and Carmelo's great, deserving of being in that building, but he didn't have access to the penthouse.
You know what's a funny story too, Mo? You know what's an interesting story? How the Pistons got the second pick in the draft, and I know there's a team kicking themselves for this one right now. So I don't know if a lot of people know that that second pick that the Pistons had, that wasn't their pick. They made a trade in 1997 with the Vancouver Grizzlies for Otis Thorpe.
Oh, wow.
And in return, they got a top 1 protected pick. So if the Grizzlies got the 1 pick, they would have gotten LeBron because it was top 1 protected. But since the pick fell to 2, the Pistons got it. So I don't think a lot of people knew that Pistons pick that they had was actually a trade for Otis Thorpe back in 1997.
That's kind of crazy, man. That's a crazy trade. Look, and Joe Dumars did a lot of things right. He did two things really wrong. It started with drafting Darko and then trading for Iverson. He killed the Pistons with those 2 moves. He killed them.
Oh yeah, Piston. Hey, it's great to use on like trivia games like Hoop Grids. Like, yeah, give me a 76er and a Detroit Piston player. Oh yeah, Allen Iverson played for both teams. Duh.
Right. You forget that because he wasn't there long, right?
No, absolutely. Of course. John Morant got into a little bit of trouble again for some reason, for reasons that we don't know. Well, him and Buddy Hield were issued warnings for their gun gestures on the court. And you know what's funny, Mo? Like, everybody clickbaited the crap out of that at first. There was, the league is investigating John Moran, and that's the only part people reporting, and nobody talked about the fact that Buddy Hield was getting reported too.
Right.
Because, that doesn't get as many headlines. But, Mo, do you think there's any issue with what John and Buddy Hield were doing, or was that the league overreacting?
I think the league was overreacting. I watched that game. You probably watched that game. It was a great game. It went back and forth. That was actually the game where Steph dropped 50 plus. But in that game, I believe John Morant had like 37 himself. It was a terrific game, and it got kind of heated and emotional. And Buddy Hield kind of was, he was kind of like making gestures towards the Grizz, and Morant in the moment, spur of the moment, he made a gesture too. But even if you go back and look at the gesture, the only thing you can say is it's a gesture, but you can't look at that and go, we had to make sure it wasn't guns. That was clearly not a gun. It was a lot of things, but it wasn't a gun gesture.
Yeah, I thought they were just overreacting. That felt like that was more of a, like, they were looking at the past, like with this whole Instagram stuff that he did, and they just completely jumped the shark on that one. I thought that was just ridiculous, honestly.
Right, and like I said, Buddy Hield was going back and forth with him just as much, but you didn't hear nobody going, "We're going to look at Buddy," because they knew they were wrong. And when they said we're not going to take further action, the classy thing of the NBA that they should have done is say that we realize that, what Ja did wasn't a violation of anything, and move on and acknowledge that. But they couldn't do that. They couldn't bring themselves to do that. Look, I would have rather the story been about how great a game it was and how sensational Steph was that night. But this kind of stuff got dragged in and it became the story. And I think it's a non-story.
I wish that was the story. I wish the story was how great the game is, Mo, because we got like a double whammy of stupid like takes from that game. Like, we had that, and then we had like, and this is why I hate ESPN half the time so much. Like, we can do one of two things, Mo, if you're ESPN the next day. We can talk about this fantastic basketball game that we just watched, or we can talk about how apparently if Steph played in the 1980s, he would only average 17 points because players would try to hurt him. And to me, that was just so beyond stupid.
I don't even know how to respond to that. My opinion is I've always been consistent with this. The truly great players, the transcendent players, which by the way would be a Steph Curry, would be a LeBron James, a Durant, the transcendent players, they would adjust and they would still be transcendent players. This is what I believe, right? The really, really special players would still be special players in any era. That's what I believe. The idea that if he played in the what did they say, the 70s or the 80s?
It was the 80s.
Well, first of all, 80s basketball had a degree of physicality to it, but it wasn't until the latter half of the 80s where it really got physical, and that was introduced to the whole league, and it kind of shell-shocked the league by Chuck Daly's Pistons. The 80s wasn't really known as like it didn't have the rap that the 90s had. If you look at the 80s, the scores were up. I mean, it was up and down. Teams played. There were a lot more scoring than there was these defensive gridlock. You remember in the 80s, the scores were in the hundreds. In the 90s, you were going to get games 78 to 60. I mean, you got some crazy low scoring games in the 90s. Nobody was hurting Steph Curry in the 80s. And first of all, until you adjusted to him and realized that he could chuck from 40 feet. I don't even know how do you prepare for that? And in the 90s, I think they would have had trouble getting hold of him because of how he moves. Like, he never is stationary, Brett. He's constantly in movement. So anybody that has the assignment of chasing him, you better be in great shape. So look, again, do I think his career would be different had he played in the 90s? I don't know. I'd like to think that he'd still be a great player. That's what I believe. The same way we think others would adjust, I'd have to think that he would adjust to that era too, right? But what wouldn't change is the three-point line is what it is, and his shooting ability still would be his shooting ability. So I'd have to think he'd still be hoisting from 35, 45 feet, and guys would still be like, I can't believe he just pulled from there. So I hate when people just simplify it and go, well, if he played in 85, 80, 90, they would hurt him and he wouldn't play anymore. I don't see it like that.
And you know what's funny is you want to talk about how like players now are, soft and weak. You know what's weak? The fact that apparently this former player that told you that, Stephen A, didn't even say they could guard him. They would just say they would hurt him. You're telling me you can't guard Steph Curry. You can't guard him, so you have to take him out. That's weak.
Yeah, that sounds like a punk move. Right, yeah.
Right, it's like I can't guard you, so let me give you an elbow to the ribs. Like, that's just soft. And that is kind of a fun thought, though. Like Steph Curry in the 90s, especially in like the mid 90s when they shortened the 3-point line.
Right.
But yeah, I think that Steph Curry would be perfectly fine in the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, the 70s, the 60s. He would be fine in any era. And if your best defense is, we'll just hurt him, then you're just kind of a punk for that. Like that's not basketball at that point.
That's not basketball. Agreed. That's not basketball. Look, Steph's father was a pretty good shooter in his own right in the 90s. But if Dell Curry had to chase Stephen Curry around screens, Stephen Curry would wear his own pops out. He'd wear Dell out. Steph is a handful, not just because of his great shooting, but because of his nonstop motion. And then when you crowd him, you forget he can put the ball on the floor and attack the basket. He's not just a catch and shoot player. He's much more than that. So look, I don't like people when they limit great players and go, this is what we know would happen to him. I don't know what would happen. In a hypothetical situation, let me tell you this, in a hypothetical situation, if Steph Curry got to match up against my favorite player, I think Steph Curry would have Magic staggering all over the place. I think on the other end of the floor, Magic would post Steph up, and Steph would have troubles guarding Magic in the post. But Magic Johnson, could you imagine Magic Johnson trying to chase Steph Curry around screens? I can hear Magic Johnson right now yelling at Cooper, "Get him!" Right? You know what I mean? like really trying to chase after that guy, because Steph Curry might be the most well-conditioned player I've ever seen.
that's the part I always like people forget about. It's like when they'll have that good old fashioned who would win like the 2017 Warriors or 96 Bulls. They'll be like, oh, MJ would just clamp up Steph. I'm like, I wouldn't put MJ on Steph. Do you think MJ's going to want to sit there chasing Curry around like 27 screens? And that's just one possession? Like,
right.
yeah, like, no, like that man is way too well conditioned. Like, yeah, they're probably going to be like, hey, Harper, yeah, that's you, buddy. Good luck.
That's 1,000% what would factually happen. MJ would be like, Ron, you don't score that much. You chase after him. Right. MJ's not trying to chase after Steph. We're not doing that.
And I do love and you know what's funny too, Mo? And we were talking about Jokic earlier, and people try to discredit him being like a top 20 player all time because of his defense. If we're discrediting players out of like top 5, 10, 15 conversations because of defense, like, do we just boot Magic out? Because it's not like Magic was some great defender either. Like, he was tall and he was like versatile, but versatile doesn't make you a good defender. And Magic Johnson was not really a good defender.
I would say Magic, just throw out their heights. Throw their heights out. I would say Magic and Steph are probably the same defensively, right? Like, they're capable defenders, but neither one of them are lockdown defenders, right? They're not. And if you watch the Lakers back then, I would argue, look, and I'm a Laker fan, but you want an honest statement. Here's an honest statement. Magic got away with playing zone a lot. Oftentimes he wasn't guarding anybody. He was just playing zone, and he got away with it. He did.
Yeah, no, it's funny though with the Jokic conversation. They hold him to a standard of defense, but that they don't hold other players to. Like what do you want him to be? Because it's not like Steph Curry's locked down, but everybody has him in the conversation. Magic, everybody has Shaq in this top 10 conversation. Shaq wasn't a lockdown defender at all.
You know what? I think Shaq should be the blueprint for this conversation. Because I think we both can agree he's the most dominant player, right? The most dominant player. But defensively, Shaq was lazy. He was not a great defender. You watch Phil. I'm telling you what Phil Jackson said this. He hated playing drop coverage. But they had to play drop coverage because Shaq couldn't play in space.
Say Shaq's value was drop coverage when he was already at the rim, kind of loaded up, ready to jump.
Right.
And contest shots, because anything else, I was just cooked. You know what's funny, Mo? There's a conversation that somebody posted. They're like, who would win a game of one-on-one? Jokic or 2001 Shaq? And I'm like, if it's a win by 2, that game's going forever because neither of them are going to guard each other.
Right.
People are sitting there trying to tell me. I just ended up having to back out of this conversation because they're like, yo, Shaq can 100% guard Jokic. I'm like, huh?
No, he can't. He can't. Did you watch Shaq play? Shaq could not. Now, he could dominate Rick Smits offensively, but I mean, on the other end of the floor, Shaq couldn't guard Rick Smits. Shaq couldn't guard Yao. He could, like, offensively, he could get off, but defensively, Shaq couldn't guard Yao. I think people forget that. Matter of fact, go back and look at his battles when he was younger and more athletic in Orlando. He could dominate Patrick Ewing on the offensive end, but he couldn't guard Patrick Ewing. So the idea that you're going to guard Joker with all that footwork, with all that up and under, like Joker's like a bigger, more skilled version of Kevin McHale.
And it's funny, because they're like, well, Joker's just plays physical. Like, do you not realize that he can pull from 27 feet out and has such an array of footwork and ball fake? So, like, that he's just going to keep Shaq off balance the entire time. Like, it's a nightmare matchup for both of them. Like, win by 2, they're both locked in the gym forever. Like,
right, I agree. Look, win by 2, they're in the gym forever. But if you put them on the floor with 8 other players, I think Joker's going to give Shaq a headache because Shaq plays drop coverage when he guards Rick Smith and Yao, and they shoot from about 15 feet away. What are you going to do with a big that shoots from the 3-point line and he shoots 40% from three?
Yeah, and it's funny because even chasing Jokic off the line, he has such an elite floater that it doesn't. You can't even say force him into the mid range because he's money from there too. So he's just such an elite 3-level scorer. And when it comes to Shaq, like I think his defense, I think gets so overrated. And then teams will point out and then people point out like, well, he has like 2 second-team all defenses in like 2000 and like 01. Like, I hope he does. Like,
right.
So, like, just from his size alone and like how much he played, like, I hope he would accidentally find an all defensive team at some point.
I'm not trying to disrespect Shaq. I'm with you. I think if he and Joker, if they guard each other, wouldn't it really come down to who could get who in foul trouble?
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Because Shaq's greatest asset is he usually gets your front line in foul trouble. I think Joker, he does the same thing, but he does it in a different way because he's a 3-level scorer.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's the thing, and that's the beauty of Jokic, that you leave him alone, he'll make you pay by scoring, but as Shaq would, I think the thing that would frustrate Shaq the most is, like, the minute he comes out of the paint and starts trying to press Jokic,
right,
then he's just going to start picking him apart with his passing, and I think that would just infuriate him. Like,
I think Shaq started this. I was watching Tuesday Night TNT, and they brought up what would peak Shaq do versus Joker, and Shaq said he said Savlanian, wherever Joker's from, barbecue chicken, right? And I'm like, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think that would be an interesting matchup. If you struggled against Yao, which he did, you're going to struggle that much more versus Joker.
Say Shaq would probably go for 60, and Jokic would go for like 40 and like 20. Like, it would be the most like wild thing. That's one matchup I wish I could see, just because of how like contrasting it would be, like Shaq doing it with pure like brute strength and Jokic just picking it apart with more finesse.
It'd be fundamentals.
It'd be contrasting styles, but the same result of just absolute domination on both ends.
So, knowing what we both know, because I don't want things to get confused, the very best version of Shaquille O'Neal, if you were drafting, knowing and you had privileged this information for whatever reason, would you still take Shaq 1 over Joker? Or would you know what I'm saying? Like, this is me pointing out that there are a lot of centers that were more skilled than Shaquille O'Neal, but he was so dominant, so overpowering that nobody was ever prepared for that, right? Like, when they won the first title, okay, then when they won the second title, people started saying, like, what are you going to do with the Lakers? And nobody had an answer for that.
Yeah, it's funny. With Shaq, I completely agree. He's just the most like dominant figure that we've ever seen in NBA history. The thing with that question, and I think what makes it fun, and here's something I've kind of maintained about Shaq though. When am I drafting Shaq? Because I think like Magic Shaq would be perfectly fine in this era with his mobility and speed. But I'm not sure, like, Lakers Shaq, he'd be dominant, but with them being more willing to call offensive fouls, I don't know how, much they let him get away with it in his back to the basket game. I think Shaq came up in the perfect era where if this was a draft in like the 90s, then Shaq, sure, absolutely. But if I'm drafting in like 2015 and I know Shaq's going to balloon up to like 320 pounds like he was on the Lakers for a while, then the answer just might be Jokic. It feels like these are two guys that are playing in, like, that played in the perfect eras for them.
All right, somebody said, were you drafting Celtic Shaq? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I'll go you a step further, and I don't say this ever. Given a choice, I'm drafting Kendrick Perkins over Celtic Shaq.
Oh,
It's not Celtics. Shaq. I would argue that Shaq was washed when he was on the Cavaliers. When he went to the Celtics, that was a whole nother level of washed.
you know, yeah, he's on my draft board. He's right next to Raptors Hakeem and Magic Patrick Ewing. He's in that category somewhere.
Or Magic Sean Kemp. Yeah. I'm with you.
Cleveland Sean Kemp when he couldn't be the Rain Man anymore.
All right, he couldn't rain no more. There went no more rain.
So yeah, that. Oh, I do love that. No, because somebody there's another post that I saw, Mo. It was, they were asking who would win because the Cavs won 60 games, and it was the first 60-win team that had, won. There we go. There's another good one. Bulls Robert Parrish.
Ooh, ouch.
But it's like, this is the first, non-LeBron team that has won 60 games for the Cavs. And there's who would win the 09 Cavs or the 2025 Cavs? And somebody literally tried to make the argument. They're like, well, the 09 Cavs, because it's LeBron and Shaq. I'm like, oh, buddy. Oh, man.
Do you remember that? I get it, but Shaq, I think Shaq averaged 12 points a game. That wasn't that. If that's the Shaq you're playing with, the current Shaq, the current Magic, or the current Cavs, I'm sorry, the current Cavaliers, they're going to run the old Cavaliers. LeBron might still have 30, 10, and 10, but they're getting waxed.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And and it's funny because I decided to not, but I almost commented. I'm like, dude, I would take literally Mo Williams and Antoine Jameson as more productive players than Shaq and on that 09 team. At least Jameson was an all-star and Mo was the floor general that they really needed. It's funny because Shaq started out pretty hot with the Cavs, but at the same time, you were just kind of yeah, he doesn't have the gas to go all the way. And then he got hurt, and sure enough, he came back, and that was just it. So it's funny because people try to point out, well, before the injury, he was doing good, and my comeback is always, yeah, but do you think even if he stays healthy, that, Shaq can maintain a high level of play throughout the entire season?
And remember, you're talking about that version of Shaq playing versus today's Cavaliers. What are they going to do? They're going to spread the floor, and that slow, unathletic version of Shaq, they're going to destroy him. They're going to that version of Shaq would be the rare defender that Jared Allen would look at and go, I'm going to attack him. I'm going to attack his left. And Jared Allen would win. And he's not even an offensive player. That. Look, like I said, LeBron would be the best player in that series if they played a series. But the today's Cavaliers, they're winning that in at least 5 games at most.
Yeah, absolutely. It would almost feel like the Magic series all over again, Mo. Do I think that the 09 Cavs would win? Absolutely not. Would LeBron drop, 38 like he did against the Magic?
For sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think when people talk about the most dominant versions of LeBron James, 2009 MVP LeBron might get slighted the most. Everybody wants to talk about how good he was in the 2010s, and rightfully so, but man, peak athletic LeBron James, like he was in 2009, was just pure insanity before he started putting on muscle.
Right. I want people they almost forget that, right now, I think you've remembered him, let's say over the last 6 or 7 years, as him being powerful and really, really fast. But back then, he was quick and fat. With that size, he was incredibly quick and explosive and on top of you before you could recover. I know compared to, is it 2013 LeBron? I believe it's 2013 LeBron. 2012 or 2013 LeBron, no version of him is better than that guy. But that 09 guy was a monster.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the best version of Bron is, 2013, but after that, I think you can, argue that 09 version is right in the mix with, in that, next couple of years on is the best player.
Facts.
That was a really good Orlando Magic team. So the fact that his shooting went cold and he still dropped 38 on him, and they still didn't have an answer for him. They just happened to have an answer for everyone else. It's just wild to watch.
And look, maybe you got to give some credit because I believe who was the coach of the Magic? Was it Van Gundy?
Yeah, it's Van Gundy.
Stan Van Gundy had a game plan. He was like, we can't put all our energy into stopping LeBron because then LeBron will beat us with his passing and other things. So they said, well, then let's lock down Mo Williams. Let's shut down Big Z. Let's make it difficult for the others, which he did. And I think that it was in the end, you ended up with a series where it was basically LeBron by himself.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Sorry about that. No, absolutely. Yeah, that whole series was a ton of fun to watch, but
that's a funny conversation that somebody would actually say with a straight face, dude, they actually had Shaq. Do you realize what version of Shaq they had, man? Are you crazy?
You want
to take that back?
I'm gonna start doing that, Mo. I'm just gonna start pulling out random all-stars that were on the end of the bench. Like, yeah, LeBron's the GOAT because in 2013 he beat Kawhi Leonard, he beat Kawhi, Tony, Ginobili, Tim Duncan, and Tracy McGrady. Like,
right. T-Mac was on that team, so yeah, he beat McGrady too, right?
Like, he beat McGrady. How is he not the GOAT?
That's actually really, really funny when you think about it. Like, somebody really tried to stick their chest out and thought throwing in that Shaq piece was it. Like, dude, they had Shaq. Like, yeah. Shaq, what they had was the ghost of Shaq, what was left of Shaq. Because, and if it had worked out well, it wouldn't have been one and done. It worked out bad, and LeBron was like, yo, you got to get this dude off my team. Like, this dude is done.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always fun. It's always fun to kind of watch when people just see the superstar, so they throw it out there, and you're just like, no, that's not the player you're thinking of. Trust me, because I've seen them do it for the Bulls too. They're like, oh, Jordan's overrated because he couldn't win, and he had George Gervin. I'm like, 85 Gervin wasn't the Iceman anymore. He was like good. But he's not the George Gervin you're thinking of that was running through the ABA with the Spurs. Like,
nah, that one right there was more like he was more like a Slurpee. That wasn't the Iceman. He was more like a Slurpee.
No, that's fair enough. Yeah,
it was a bad team, bro. Like, we have to be fair to these guys when they first come in. There was a reason why they were able to draft Michael Jordan. They sucked. It was a bad team.
Yeah, and like. Also, like, when you think about these star players that are playing with these, these aging star players, like, half the time, there's a reason they're available. Like, there's a reason the Bulls were able to get George Gervin without much of an issue. Like,
right. He spent his whole career with the Spurs, and if the Spurs still thought he was George Gervin, the Iceman, he wouldn't have been in a Bulls jersey.
Right. Say, like, Larry Bird got to play with, Pete Maravich, but that wasn't Pete Maravich. Like,
that was not Pistol Pete Maravich. That was what was left of Pistol Pete Maravich.
Yeah,
that's
like,
facts.
Yeah, that's just my fun point of the day. Like, because I saw that and I felt like I needed to make the point. If a superstar player and another superstar playing together looks too good to be true, probably is. So
I love that point.
But. Say, that's all I got for us today, Mo. Anything you wanted to add before we get up on out of here?
No, look, great show, great discussion. Appreciate Jory, appreciate Kyle, appreciate everybody that joined us in the chat tonight. I will say this because you guys have inspired me. Maybe next week, Brett and I will do not just our top 10. We will give you guys our top 20 players all time. Spoiler alert. The Joker is top 20. He's actually well inside the top 20 from what we surmised tonight. So just letting you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And that'll be a lot of fun. And we'll still bring you up to date on all the most recent NBA topics and discussions. You can catch us tomorrow on the morning show on the second half of our double-double.
Double-double, baby.
We talk some NFL, NBA, and I'm going to bring you the results of round 3 from our WrestleMania main event tournament, which will conclude during our WrestleMania 41 watch along on the 19th and 20th. 19th and 20th. So I say I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys next week for the second half of our list. I appreciate everybody who tuned in. Thank you very much. And until then, enjoy the rest of your night.
Thank you for tuning in to the And One podcast. If you like our content, you can find more on the Wire to Wire Podcast Network on YouTube, Facebook, and Spotify. Want more And One? Find it on Wire to Wire. Like and share our Facebook page. And join the And One Discord. Grab the link to join from our Facebook. Thank you for tuning in and have a wonderful day.